Hi, this is Sidney, and today we'll talk about shock absorbers. So this is your vehicle's shock absorber. As the name implies, it absorbs the shock of the bad roads that we have here in the Philippines. Now, old-timers will ask you, and then, ano ba yung shock mo? Fluid o gas? O wala nang fluid shock ngayon. They're all gas shocks. But here's the thing. Inside here is both gas and fluid. It's called gas shock because up here there is pressurized nitrogen gas here, but the shock absorption is still done by oil. It's still a fluid. It's just that the old shocks don't have any pressurized gas and it's just fluid. So now it's both gas and fluid. All shocks right now are like that. As you can imagine, this thing goes up and down to absorb the shock. This is actually called a McPherson Strut, named after the guy who invented it. So what that simply means is that there is a baso here where the spring sits. This bolts on to the axle and the hub, and this bolts to the chassis. So the big question is, how do you know if sira na yung shocks mo? The easiest, fastest, and most sure way to find out, you have to take the shock out of the car to be able to tell if it's busted or not. So here we have two shocks. One is new, one is old. This one is busted, and I'll show you why. As you can see, it don't go up no more. Effectively, this thing is not absorbing any shock at all. And we compare it to a new shock. As you can see, it has to go up on its own, and it has to go up pretty fast. If it doesn't go up this fast, it's also busted, or dead, or dying. New, old, dead, alive. You may have heard the old school advice also. You make kalog-kalog the car to see if the shocks are okay. That is also not true, and I'll show you why. We have several cars here to demonstrate. The old school wisdom is, if it does that the shock is okay. No, not necessarily. Because what you're doing is just pushing down on the spring and it just goes up. What makes the shock goes up is actually the spring. Then we have here another car. It doesn't go up or down. So what does that mean? The shock is busted? No, it's not. BMs are really like that. That's why the handling is good. Here we have a Fortuner. It bounces a lot more than the Ford Explorer. But is the shock dead? No, it's not. It's just really like that. So that method doesn't really work. You cannot be certain if your suspension is good or bad just by doing the bounce test. No, because every car behaves differently when you bounce it. So the only real way to know if your shock is good or bad is to have it taken out and then do the press test, what I just did. Ano magandang bilhin na shock? You can always buy OEM. You can go to the casa, buy whatever that they're selling, and then call it a day. It is, after all, the same spec as what you have. If you're looking for something cheaper, get one of these, KYB XLG. This is pretty much the same spec as the original shock, but of course at a cheaper price. And chances are, if you have a Japanese car, KYB has an application for it. So this is a front shock. This is a rear shock. This, I believe, is for a Honda Jazz. This, I believe, is for a Lancer. If you want to step up from something better, KYB also has this. It's called a new SR Special. It looks exactly the same as the shock that's going to be taken out. The big difference is what's inside here. This one will actually give a better ride than what you have because, like I said, it's a shock absorber. It's better at absorbing the shock. And there are things that make it slightly better. A bigger and fatter shaft than the original one. The piston inside here is also better, than the valving is also slightly different. And this one is built to take lowering springs if your ride is lowered. Because if you put lowering springs on a OEM shock, chances are in less than a year, your shock ain't gonna work no more as well. So might as well get a set of these. And for German cars, there's only one go-to brand. It's Stein. That's it. So there, hopefully, you have now a better understanding of what your vehicle's shock absorbers does and how to spot if it's busted.